Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined by the incomparable William Gardner. And it is the regular signing period, but the regular part of that almost needs to be put in quotations now, William, because most of the action takes place during the early signing period. And the whole recruiting timeline has gotten so accelerated that you throw on top of it that Colorado's going more quality over quantity with high school recruiting. There's not going to be a whole lot of fireworks. And it does sound like Colorado's going to get one more high school edition for the regular signing period, but it's different than it used to be when this was the day for college football recruiting.
Yeah, I don't know about that incomparable. Like, can't be compared to anything that makes any sense, probably. But yeah, I don't know. Some of us are old enough to remember. I don't know how long has it been since it was only on February.
I'm guessing we've had about 4 or 5 early signing periods now.
Wow, boy, sure seems longer than that. I don't know. I guess I was
Maybe.
just say us old timers had to think back, but I guess you don't have to be much of an old timer to remember that. But it used to be that you just wait all year for Wednesday, that first Wednesday in February, and the build up and always all the surprise. Now there's no surprises anymore. It's like it's all done on social media, and you kind of know what's coming. But you used to wait for Wednesday and wait to see what happened and who'd you lose and who'd you pick up and all that kind of stuff.
And so was it like the newspapers covering it? How did you follow along with signing day back before the internet really took off?
Well, I mean, you had to wait till Thursday, you had to wait till Thursday there was, I think for a while, there was one radio show. I can't remember who that guy was, and he kind of talked about it a little bit. And then, otherwise you had to wait for the paper to come out on Thursday to see what everybody had. And so then it was always like a lot more surprises then because guys were not as much covered and you're trying to figure out what you could find out about guys.
Today's episode is brought to us by McAul Capital Fractional CFO Services. If you are running a successful small to medium-sized business, you have an impressive set of skills. But as your company grows, you face new and different challenges. When you eclipse $3 million in revenue, you likely have a whole new set of financial challenges. Are you looking for financial guidance and support but don't have the resources to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have the solution for you, hiring a fractional CFO from McAul Capital. A fractional CFO can work with businesses on a part-time basis, providing the same expertise as a full-time CFO at a fraction of the cost. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. We love to help your business thrive by improving its profitability and eliminating your financial headaches. Get a long-term partner you can trust to help craft your financial strategy, understand the profitability of each client, help manage your cash smartly so you can take advantage of rising interest rates, and more. It's likely that a partnership with McAul Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with McAul Capital. For more information or to set up a meeting, visit McAuleyCapital.com or email CFO@McAuleyCapital.com. That's McCauley Capital.com. As we sit here and record this, Colorado ranks 22nd overall with their 2024 class. That includes the transfers that they brought in as well. And this is number one among future Big 12 programs. Do you feel good about what Colorado's done in terms of the overall talent they've brought into this program, both from competing in 2024, but also kind of building for the future?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think they've brought in a lot of talent, kind of across the age ranges I mean, anymore you got to, as Prime said, that class he was at this week, you got to win now because you can't wait 2 years. You'd be gone in 2 years if you don't get it done. And then if you have success this year, that builds next year's class, and it just sort of repeats itself after a while. But what they've done, I think, is fill all the needs that they had. Well, most of the needs that they had, the glaring needs, and I think the only thing that remains really is linebacker. But they've brought in some really. I think the transfer class is significantly better than last year, especially at the top end, and some of the stars and the players on the lines really are significantly better. And I think, we've addressed the offensive line, we've addressed the pass rush, we've addressed the defensive line in the middle. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, you look at it, half of their 6 early high school signees were ranked in the top 90 nationally. Obviously, Jordan Seaton being the headliner in that group. Um, it really is a quality over quantity approach. And I'm told that going ahead to 2025, you could see that number jump up a little bit. In the number that I've heard is, somewhere between 12 and 15 guys in that 2025 class. 15 would be on the high end of that. They might not get to
Yeah.
that. Are you okay kind of with that approach? Especially, I mean, you couldn't do this before because
Right.
you went to the transfers and they'd have to sit out a year.
Right.
And so you weren't getting immediate help. And, I don't think we want to spend a whole lot of time thinking about this until it becomes a reality because it's tough to think about. But, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are going to be off,
Yeah.
to the NFL after this coming season. And so you're probably going to have to use the portal to get in a lot of ready-made guys to kind of fill in some of those gaps. Will Shepard, LeJontay Wester are a couple of receivers we expect big things out of there. They're going to have some spots they're going to have to fill again through the portal this coming year.
Yeah, and I think with Shedeur and Travis moving on, I think that they'll be able to attract some of those really top guys to fill some of those spots. But again, Coach Prime talked about it in that class he was at, where you bring in these freshmen, they got to adjust to college, they got to figure out where the weight room is, they got to figure out how to lift, they got to figure out how to work hard, how to go to class. And like he said, let somebody else deal with it. And I'll bring in a guy that's a sophomore or a junior that already knows how to do all those things and is accustomed to sort of the college level of doing stuff. So, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you take the high school class and you fill it in, with really top level guys who can compete right away. And then I think most of what you do is get your transfer guys and fill the needs that you have. So, the old school way, guys on the board that complaining about there's not enough high school players, it just ain't how it's done anymore, man. It doesn't make any sense to do it that way.
Well, you even run the risk of, if you bring a really talented high school guy in and you're at a place as a program where it's healthy with experienced guys at most positions, those young guys might not want to have to be patient and they might get impatient and they might
Right.
transfer. And so you spend a year or two trying to develop those guys and then they get impatient and then you got to fill their spot by going to the portal anyway. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
it is a new day and age. And I think we're all trying to kind of wrap our heads around it. And now, just you see just yesterday with news of laborers maybe being introduced to. I mean, it really is not going to probably settle down anytime soon. But let's dive into a big edition that's going to get announced. I mentioned that there's going to be a high school edition expected on Wednesday, and Colorado is also expected to announce the transfer edition of BJ Green from Arizona State. This is allowed to happen because he can sign financial aid agreement with Colorado, which binds Colorado to him, but not him to Colorado
Right.
until he enrolls, which is expected to take place. I heard May. I would assume late May is when he's going to get in Boulder because he's finishing up work in mechanical engineering at Arizona State. So not only was he Arizona State's top graded defensive player last fall, he's also a really good student. This is one that's hard not to get excited about. What are your overall thoughts about BJ Green joining the herd?
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, that's so unusual to have a defensive lineman, and he's an engineering student. I mean, the typical sort of feeling is that the offensive linemen are the smart guys, and the defensive linemen are kind of the not so bright guys. But have a guy like BJ Green, I think the fact that he's a engineering student really speaks. Like some people say, well, he's not here till he's here, but he's an engineering student. He's coming here as much for the school as for the football. But what he brings on the football field, he and Chidozie Nwankwo are guys that come in and are proven at this level on the defensive front. And there's just no, BJ Green I think I put a post up yesterday where BJ Green could very easily be the best edge player in the Big 12. and Nwankwo could very easily be one of the best inside defensive tackles in the Big 12 because he was last year, and Green was last year in the Pac-12. So you can't overstate what these two guys bring to this team and to this program, because all of a sudden we have top guys along that defensive line at two spots, and man, we haven't had that in a while.
Yeah, if you look at the 24/7 sports transfer rankings, Colorado has the number 5, 6, and 7th ranked defensive linemen with Okunlola, Quincy Wiggins, and BJ Green on board. And
Yeah,
we'll get to this a little bit later, but you brought up Wankwo. I mean, he's almost criminally underrated in this class. So you
yeah,
really have
yeah,
really bolstered that front seven, needing still, like you said, some linebackers. And you might just have to be a little bit more patient with linebackers. I think DJ Lundy, going back to Florida State, kind of threw a wrench in what they were hoping to build with that group
yeah,
this spring. And you feel it now, and then you get into that spring transfer window, and there's a bunch of really talented guys out there.
right.
Maybe you could still make room for them, but I think patience is probably best served in that situation.
Yeah, I don't think we want to take a reach and fill it with somebody that isn't really a top level player. Because, like you said, after spring ball, things kind of solidify at various different places, and all of a sudden, uh, you got some really top players coming available, and you don't have spots for it. So I don't know where we are in terms of our numbers, but I'd rather wait and see at this point. I'm sure they're already talking to people and talking to guys that are looking to transfer and have some ideas. So. I'm comfortable that we'll find a couple of guys at that position that really will be difference makers. And the other thing is you get a lot of these guys on campus and you go through spring ball just like last year. And sometimes they don't, a couple of those guys that we thought were sure things didn't work out last year.
I just hope this spring transfer window, and it shouldn't, because you're in such a different spot as a program this spring than you were a year ago. But
Right.
that portal opens up to non-graduates from April 15th through the 30th, and Colorado spring game is going to be on April 27th. So you hope there's not one position that totally gets decimated. It'd be fun if they have enough bodies at every position to be able to do a true spring game where you kind of split the team up. I think that adds to the entertainment value a little
Yeah.
bit, but there might be a situation, especially if you have some injuries at a certain spot. You have a few guys hit the portal that things could thin out a little bit this spring. But how would you like to see the recruiting calendar lay out? I mentioned that it's changed drastically,
Yeah.
whereas the first Wednesday in February was it. Now you get this early signing period. I'm curious, if you were in charge of the way that this calendar was set up, how would you like to see the signing dates? Would you go back to the way it was, or kind of tweak the way it is now?
No, I've always liked having the early period. It's like, I don't know. I think a lot of guys I think this opens up things a lot for guys, and they don't, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's so confusing anymore with what's the windows for the transfers, and then you got the 2 days for the high school guys and whatever. But I've always liked the 2 days, the two different days and the two different times of the year. The February days maybe for guys that get hot a little bit later and develop, and then you fill your needs, see what you still need coming up to that point. I think it'd be nicer to maybe have that second day a little later even. I don't know, let some guys really uh uh showcase themselves between the two, and I don't know, it's hard to say. I think
Well,
I think it doesn't make a lot of sense in turn. You got to wait for that spring period and kind of see how guys play out, see how your new guys from last year develop and what have you before you really know what's going on.
I like the early signing period, but I'd kind of go to more of the basketball model. They've got their early signing period in November, then those guys play their senior season, and then you have the regular signing period in the spring. And if you sign early, and an example all throughout there is McKinley Wright. He signs with Dayton, and then Miller goes and leaves their staff. And McKinley Wright was allowed to get released from his national letter of intent and re-go through the recruiting process.
Yeah.
He ends up at Colorado. I would like that for college football. And again, you gotta allow these guys to get let out of their NLI if
Yeah.
their position coach or their head coach leaves, I think, during that course of time, which will be quite a few guys. But some of these recruits just want to get it out of the way and they
Right.
prefer to make it official.
Yeah.
And so have a signing period in late July, then let the coaches focus on the season a little bit more and let those players focus on their season, and then have a regular signing period the first Wednesday in February, kind of the way it used to be.
So,
Again,
so you would say like the early signing date would be before the season?
yeah, I'm thinking you have official visits from like March through mid July,
Yeah.
late July, and then you have a signing period like third week of July. I know there are coaches that try to uh, schedule their vacation time in July. So maybe there would be some pushback there. I just maybe you could even have that early signing period early July, so those coaches get a true
Yeah.
vacation that month before camp starts. But the reason I don't like the December signing period is because you've got college programs that if you've had a successful season, you're
Or a
preparing for a
bowl
bowl
game.
game. You
Right.
might be preparing for a college football playoff in the future,
Yeah.
and you're having to deal with all the loose ends with recruiting. And then you look at the player side of it. If their team is doing really well in high school, their team's playing deep into the playoffs in December. So it's hard for them to get out on winter official visits. And so the timeline just seems a little too crunched in there. Um, that's kind of how I feel about it. I
You'd have
just,
to I think you'd have to be careful about who you signed in the early period because a lot of guys are going to blow up and develop in their senior year, and then other guys, that senior year they drop off and don't play as well. So um, I don't know. There's some risks either way you do it, I think. But yeah, that right in the middle of December kind of puts it in the middle of playoffs and bowl season, what have you. So that does create an issue, but it's not an issue we've had in a long time.
unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm still optimistic that's going to change, though. I'm
yeah.
not making holiday plans aside from I really do think I'm going to be traveling around Christmas this coming year. What do you think?
Well, I think, we didn't have that on our plan, but let's go there. I think it's quite clear with the difference in the schedule with the difference in the schedule and the conference that we're in. We're not going to be playing as many top ranked teams, and we're as talented as most of the teams will play this year, and we're going to be significantly more talented. Still remains to be seen what we do offensively and defensively with our new coordinators. But man, we might be the most talented team on the field more than half of our games this year, and there's really no reason not to expect or shoot for 8 or 9 wins, quite frankly.
I mentioned we both mentioned that the recruiting process has become so accelerated. So on the other side of that is even though 2024 might be kind of quiet in terms of additions on the regular signing period because most of the work had already been done, you're seeing a lot of traction with 2025 recruiting. Five-star quarterback Julian Lewis was recently on campus,
Right.
and I put up some other notes on a few other 2025 recruits to keep an eye on BuffStampede.com. So make sure you check out that.
Yeah.
We're already trying to tackle that coverage as best as possible. Like I said, I've heard that it's probably going to be about a dozen guys, which would be almost double what they did from the high school ranks
Yeah.
this year if they do that in 2025.
Yeah. I would have thought they'd had, like maybe a little more traction with a top quarterback this year to come in 1 year on the campus behind Shador, but clearly that'll be an open spot next time around. And I don't think we've got the heir apparent on the campus right now. So, it's going to be wide open. That could be a little bit crazy,
Yeah.
quarterback recruiting for next year.
Yeah, they were hoping that was going to be Antoine Hill, right? He was going to
Right.
be reclassifying to 2024 and being Shadur's understudy this past year, and now it doesn't even sound like Colorado and him are really looking at each other. So they're going in a different direction there. I mentioned Julian Lewis. They've offered some other 2025 quarterbacks, but
Right.
I think there will be impatience if this is the strategy, but you could probably get a really good transfer quarterback next
Oh
year.
yeah. Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
you would think is like you look at this past year and the transfer quarterbacks and what they did with some of these teams, and you're going to be looking at that kind of a guy with Shador leaving.
yeah. Did you have any thoughts on the schedule release? I've already shared my thoughts to the point where if I say any more, I'm going to be repeating myself. But I'm curious if you had any thoughts with the 2024 schedule.
I mean, I guess I'm so happy to not see any of these no good stinking Pac-12 places anymore. I'm so sick of those teams. It just makes me want to scream. Except for my boyfriend up in Eugene. Can't wait to see him. Me and
Hey,
him.
I didn't steer you into that one. I can't take the
Me,
blame this
me,
time.
me and him got a date. He's got some dental work coming, but no, I don't know. I mean, you know what? I'm excited to be back playing in some of those teams that I grew up with playing. And like I said before, I mean, I look at that schedule and man, that's a lot more reasonable schedule than what we had to play last year, it seems like to me. So I'm pretty excited about it, and I think we're gonna have fun with it, and um, you know, play some teams we haven't played in a while, and go to some places we haven't played in a while, and really kind of get a fresh new start at a really good time.
Matt Smith is trying to get you and I out to Disney World before the
Yeah.
UCF game. What are the odds on that happening?
Well, I don't know. I got to talk to the wife, and I gotta mark that off. And is he hosting? Is he buying the tickets? And
I
yeah,
think he really just wants a picture with you, Mickey Mouse, and himself, and he's going to frame that, put it by his bed.
nice, nice, yeah, or Goofy or something like that. Yeah, I don't
No,
know.
I actually am going to try to head out there. I don't know. Can you do parts of Disney World in one day? I mean, we got three kids. I can't really
Yeah,
justify leaving much before probably Thursday night. Maybe get a day in out there. I'll hop on a few roller coasters and feel like I've done it. I don't really need to see
yeah. No,
everything.
I mean Disney World. Walk around with the kids, and what's the other one? Universal Studios. I think is depending on what you're into and what you like is a lot of fun or whatever. But there's so many different places to go in the Orlando area. With a month you couldn't see everything, so you sort of pick and choose a way to the things that matter most to your kids and you, and do a half day or a day and knock it out and have fun.
So I would imagine, based on previous stories, you're not going to be making the trek to Lincoln.
Uh, it's not going to be a priority. No, let me just put it that way. Although, our kid is going to nursing school in Omaha, so who knows, maybe we can make it a on the way sort of a thing, and then she goes to see the kid, and then on the way back, she bails me out of jail and we come home.
Well, I was going to say, what if you were setting odds on you going to that game? What are the odds on you getting arrested or detained on some level?
Well, I'm a much more calm person than I was back in the day. So, especially if you got to go with the wife. Um, she was actually born in Nebraska, so uh, she claims no allegiance to the Big Red anymore. But that could be fun. I don't know. Her grandparents were on a farm. She always says, "I got to go to my grandparents' farm," and it's typical Nebraska. Get off the interstate at some road and drive north.
Before we get into our 2024 signing class picks, which is going to be fun, I'm going to share some of my picks from previous years, and some of them are really good. Some of them are pretty laughably bad. So we're going to have some fun with that. But on a serious note, William, since we last recorded our last show, Larry Zimmer, a longtime voice of the Buffs, also did play-by-play for the Broncos for a number of years and did a lot of other sporting events, passed away at the age of 88. I got to know Larry a little bit, not all that well. Actually knew his wife, Bridget. I know her a little bit more. While Larry would do the broadcast, she'd come in the press box and watch the game with the regular media a lot of the time. With your past at Colorado, what did Larry Zimmer mean to you? He's kind of for the folks that were around during the glory days, his voice was kind of synonymous with a lot of those big plays and big moments that happened in the program.
Yeah, back in the day, I mean, and he's sort of replaced by Mark Johnson, and that voice becomes more recent. But Larry Zimmer was just sort of the guy that was always there, and through all those great times and great things that happened, and through the bad times in the early '80s and what have you, was just sort of a fixture and became synonymous with CU football. I think, sometimes you'd hear his calls nationally when things really big, exciting things happened and what have you. So that's a loss to the CU football community, and he was a huge part of the program, and just somebody that we're going to miss.
Definitely. Rest in peace, Larry. All right, the 2024 signing class picks, and this is going to involve, unlike a lot of the times in the past, is going to include both high school signees and transfer commits because it would be hard to make our signing class picks with just high school guys. There's
Yeah.
6 that have been announced at the recording of this. There's going to be another one. So let's include the transfers there as well. And the first category here is top offensive signee. Last year, my pick was Omarion Miller. That turned out to be pretty good. I'm looking back through the year, some other guys that have won this award in the past: Jordan Tyson, Brendan Rice, Tim Lynott Jr., Shea Fields, Cepho Lufau, Nelson Spruce, Ryan Miller. Those are the good ones. Let me try to pick out. I one year had Jaron Mangum as my top offensive pick. That didn't turn
Well,
out so well.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't a bad pick at the time, given what you knew. I mean, he did pretty well as a freshman.
Yeah. Shane Dillon, he was an Elite 11
Yeah.
guy, just never really panned out. Uh, Maurice Greer was my first ever top offensive pick back in
Wow.
2005. That's when I started
Man,
doing
that's
this. He
going
never even
way
made it to
back.
campus. That goes way back, huh?
Yeah. Holy cow. Wow.
But with this 2024 class, I got to go chalk here. But are you? Do you have a pick?
Yeah. What'd you say?
I'm going to go chalk. It's going to be Jordan Seaton.
Okay. Chalk. What do you mean? Is that his nickname?
The expected, he's the top rated guy in this
Oh,
class.
okay.
Sometimes you want to maybe think outside the box a little bit in a segment like this, but Jordan Seaton is the most college ready offensive lineman that I've ever seen come into the program. And we've gotten some glimpses of the work he's putting in. And yeah, he's got work to do, and he's not going to be a polished product even by the time they start the season. But I feel even better about him being the starting left tackle now that he's been in the program, and just seeing the work he's putting in and how
Yeah.
he's fitting in, even fitting in with that group. He's personality wise
Right.
really adjusted quickly
Yeah.
to Colorado football.
I mean, I'm going to go the same direction with a different name, and I'm going to go with Tyler Johnson, who I think it could also be that left tackle, but who's also played at this level and in this conference at Houston, brings that size and experience, and quite frankly, I feel like I could pick any one of these. I could go with Justin Mayers because I think that guy's going to be a stud. Khalil Benson is another offensive tackle that's played at the Power Five level, and so I don't know that it's an automatic that Seaton wins that spot, but I like that we have competition, and so I'll put my marker down on Tyler Johnson, having played in this conference and having the size to play tackle and offensive guard. I think you wouldn't go wrong, like the trying to think of the name of it, the speed that a guy like Wester brings is exciting to see. There's a lot of guys that could really be something special that are coming in. But I think if you're on offense, you got to, man, being a CU fan for the last 10 years, you got to love the offensive linemen that are coming in this year. If we can't finally get an offensive line this year, I don't know what to tell you.
I like that. Tyler Johnson isn't he hasn't been as vocal on social media
Yeah.
as Mayers and Khalil Benson. So maybe he doesn't get talked about it as much as a result, but no, he's clearly one of the guys this offseason that's expected to come in and start right away. Top defensive signee. Last year I picked Cormani McLean. I would say maybe the jury's still out there, but it does sound like he's much more comfortable net with this being his second full semester on campus. Looking back at past previous picks, Trevor Woods was my pick for
Nice.
top defensive signee in 2021, Christian Gonzalez in 2020, Mark Perry 2019. So I had a good run in there. Um, Chidobe Awuzie back in the day.
Yeah.
Chidera Uzo Deribe was a sleeper pick of mine back in the day as well. John Major in 2008. There's some other guys that didn't pan out so well. Dylan Dixon was my pick in 2022. He's
Yeah.
no
Well,
longer in the program. Uh, who else did I have in there? Michael Matthews never really panned out.
no.
Yuri
Yeah.
Wright was the one
Oh boy. Yeah.
in 2012. Just
That
you can have the God given gifts, but if you don't have a passion for the game,
Right.
you're
Right.
not going to be successful.
Right. Right.
And he's done well in life since then. So I'm
Yeah.
not trying to
Well,
be
God
too
bless
harsh here,
him. And
but
yeah. And you know what? It ain't for everybody. And there's not a problem with that. That
yeah.
this level of work and commitment it's got to be. It's like some of the guys I've coached over the years that went on to the next level and had tremendous talent. And the guys that really made it big in the game are the guys that need the game. And I always look at Nate Lamb, it's like he needed football, man. And I don't know how to explain that or to put it in better words, but his need for the game, it's beyond a love for the game. It was a need for the game. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be successful because you're not going to put in the work level to be that great, that to have that greatness. So it's hard, and that's the hardest thing to know. And that's I think a big part of my pick in this category this year.
Who is your pick? I'll let you
Did
lead
you
off
say did
here.
you say yours?
Not yet.
Okay, there's only one guy. There's only one guy, man. And if you've seen him in the weight room in some of these videos and seen what he did last year for Houston, it's Chidozie Nwankwo. And that guy, I don't think he can be blocked. And I think he's going to be, I don't know, I'm trying to think of superlatives, but I think he's going to be a guy that just blows up the middle like nothing we've seen. I'm trying to think back and go back to Joel Steed almost, but uh, you look at that guy and he's got the chip on his shoulder because everybody says he's too short and blah blah blah, and he's another one of those guys that got that need for the game, and just has the talent. And he's already done it to this level. And Jesus, I keep saying, every time I think about it, it's like, imagine trying to block a Volkswagen. You're not going to win very often.
Yeah, he's got the leverage advantage on pretty much anybody he goes up against. Hang with me because I like your pick there, but my top defensive addition is going to be BJ Green. Uh, and there are a few guys I kind of debated here, but I look at how impactful he is a pass rusher,
Yeah,
not just sacks, but his hurries and quarterback hits. I mean, those numbers are just off the charts
right.
last year. And
And he's
you
big
look
enough and
at
stout enough to hold an edge on the run. And
Yeah, and it's not like teams can just focus all their attention in trying to block him. You mentioned uh, Nwankwo on the interior there, and you bring in Okunlola, who can play on the edge as well and is a really good pass rusher, and you bring back Arden Walker. You've got a lot of pieces at edge, and so I really like him as kind of the top guy in that group. But last year, when Jordan Dominic was kind of that top guy, and there were other guys that were transferring that were
right,
rotating in there and had moments here and there, but there was a pretty big drop off between him and those next guys, right?
right.
I think with some of these guys getting extra seasoning in the program, and then you bring in Okunlola and BJ Green, and it's going to be a group that's going to be much more consistently getting after the other quarterback. But that segues me into my most underrated addition here, William, and that is Chidozie Nwankwo. He's got
Yeah.
an 87 transfer rating. I mentioned it's almost criminal. This is a guy that, based on what he did at Houston, and we've seen Coach Prime really take him under his wing and expects big things out of him. And he's going to be a face of this program. You see him already featured a lot on social media. So that's who I had as my most underrated signee. So I kind of fell in line with you a little bit there, but different category there.
Well, and I think, for mine, we're going to kind of do a mirror thing here. And I would go back to the edge and talk about Quincy Wiggins. Who any other year would be a guy would be looking at and go, holy crap, look at this guy, right? And then he kind of falls. You look at a BJ Taylor, a BJ Green, and Okunlola, and this guy sort of falls behind them, and you think, and he gets lost track of by people. But I think he's a guy who come in and make an immediate difference on that defensive line, both on the edge and some interior play too as well. So he's a guy that stands out to me. If we look at the offensive side, Khalil Benson would be one. So that there are quite a few guys. You just go down this list of guys, and I think if we're talking underrated, you know what? Eric Brantley, Michael Welch, a running back. There's a couple of guys nobody talks about, and I think they're both going to do big things and and soon, early. So there's a lot of guys I think you could look at legitimately in this category.
Yeah, I think Michael Welch is clearly underrated, and I had talked so much about him being underrated during the early signing period. I think for this exercise, I just wanted to talk
Yeah,
about somebody new because
yeah.
we did talk a lot about that. Last year's underrated pick was Tajay McCoy. So
Oh yeah.
I did pretty well there.
Yeah, and I think he's the guy that everybody's forgetting about at that edge position as well, because he's just a natural born pass rusher. And I think one of the questions about him will be how does he stack up on the run defense, but I think he's going to be another guy that people forgot about because of all these other names at edge.
There's some guys that have panned out pretty well from previous picks going back past last year. This is a real mixed bag here. You ready for this, William? These are my most underrated picks from 2022 going back to 2005. I'm just going to list off a bunch of names, and a couple of these guys panned out, but not most of them. Starting in 2022, Xavier Smith, Jackson Anderson, Montana Lamonius Craig, Alec Pell, Hassan Hippolyte, Dante Sparaco, Anthony Julmise, Stephen Montez, Dylan Keeney, Michael Adkins, Donta Abram, Brady Day, Corderi Clark, Devon Thornton, Rodney Stewart, that was a good one, Chris
Yeah,
Perry, Wes Simon, and Kevin Moyd.
a lot of those
So
guys.
I'm pretty hit or miss with this
Yeah,
category if you go
a lot
back
of
through
those
the
guys.
years.
A lot of those guys I don't even remember even ever hearing of.
Yeah, that's yeah. Xavier Smith and
And
Jackson
Dante
Anderson, they were.
Sparaco, isn't Dante Sparaco still playing out there somewhere in his 15th transfer season?
I'm gonna leave that one alone. But yeah, I'm proud of the Speedy Stewart pick in there. The
Yeah,
Montez. I remember watching him at a summer camp, and it was like this kid's got an NFL arm. But yeah, some of those have not panned out as well. Anthony Julmise is the one. I'm like, dang, like he showed a lot of promise,
yeah,
and
and just
we won't get into the whole legal thing because I don't know all the particulars, but it didn't seem like something that should have ended a college athlete's career.
yeah, I don't know, and there's always something else going on behind the scenes. It's hard to say. Uh,
Yeah. All right, let's move along to top athlete. Who you got here?
well, I think this is a tough one. I want to hear what you had to say, but I think it depends on how we're defining athlete in terms of just plain speed. If we're just talking speed, then it's probably Wester. Um, if we're talking, more like all the various different aspects, uh, like uh, um, like like Hunter, I don't know, then maybe you're talking um, lost my train of thought here. I said maybe a Will Shepherd out of Vanderbilt, maybe you know, maybe Cameron Michael or Draylon Miller from the high school ranks. So uh, I'm having a hard time picking one. I think maybe Cameron Michael.
Okay. So yeah, also have a category most versatile, and so they're very similar. Most versatile, I've kind of gone more with the thought process that this could be a guy that could end up playing at a multiple
Mhm.
positions on offense and defense. And uh, a good example of that is my pick last year. And my most versatile last year was Adam Hopkins. He comes in as a receiver and actually played defensive back this
Yeah,
past year and could end up playing either side of the ball. It sounds like cornerback right
right.
now. So that's why I kind of picked him for that. And last year, my top athlete was Dylan Edwards, and it went down to
Yeah,
that just next level speed. And so
right.
they're very similar in that regard. And so we can kind of do them together. My top athlete was LeJontay Wester,
Yeah,
uh, a guy that what was there was a description of him, something about how his ankles are like rubber, made of rubber, and that he can juke guys out and still maintain his acceleration. And that's why he was an All-American kickoff returner and a
yeah,
guy that, they had some moments on special teams last year, but that's an area that they definitely needed to shore up even
yeah.
beyond just the kickoffs. And so I think he's going to make a play or two in the return game that's going to change momentum in football games this year.
But and he was on that list. I don't know if you saw that yesterday. I think the list of top 20th fastest players in college football this year. He and Dylan Edwards were both on that list. And so
Yeah.
like that kind of speed is obvious as pure athleticism, and just game breaking kind of craziness. So yeah, that's exciting to see back, have those kinds of guys back in this program that we used to have all the time. It's like
And your pick for top athlete was Cam Michael. Is that correct?
well, I don't know, I
Because
guess,
that was my most versatile. Because this is a
yeah,
guy that was a quarterback, running back, defensive back in college.
yeah,
I think he might be best suited at running back, but he says he's going to
yeah.
play receiver right away. But he
Yeah,
could end up at a lot of different spots.
well, yeah, let me pick him for the versatile thing because I'm not like again, I'm not 100% sure where he'll play, but I would have to join you with Wester for the best athlete.
Cool. And we will go back beyond on both these categories. For newer Buffs fans, this doesn't mean a whole lot, but I think people that have been following the program for a while get a kick out of how poor some of my previous picks were.
Well,
Uh,
but look at the quality of the recruiting too. I mean, you
yeah,
can't.
right.
It's not
Yeah.
entirely your fault. It's like you got to do the best you can and make a. Not to call anybody a sow's ear, make a soak purse out of a sow's ear, but some of the guys we had to work with were not top quality.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of these guys didn't pan out. I had in 2022 and going back from there, Victor Venn, Ty Robinson, Ashad Clayton, Levante Chenault,
Wait,
Deion
wait, wait,
Smith.
wait. Did you say a shot? Three Heisman's Clayton?
Yeah, like I said, I don't hide from really bad picks that I've had in the future. Now I've nailed a lot of these, but again, you gotta like you gotta have more than just the God-given ability, and he did not
Yeah,
have that.
right,
But you
right,
don't really know that until they're tested, right?
right.
He was superb, just unbelievable late in his senior year of high school. I mean, he was
Yeah.
unstoppable.
And there's no high school in the country that really, works the way you do at this level. So you don't know until they get here and do it.
Do you remember? So Mitch Rodri comes in as
Right.
O-line coach, and he
Never
loved to
heard of
cook,
it.
and that's awesome. He would cook jambalaya and
Yeah.
gumbo, and he gave Ashad Clayton a serving of it, and he never
Yeah.
brought the
The
bowl
bowl
back to
back.
him,
Yeah.
and he would not let that go.
Yeah. Well, I guess he got even selling all of his triple jumbo size buff gear online. So
All right, we're going to keep rolling down these names. Deion Smith, that was a good pick back in
yeah,
2018. Katie Nixon, pretty solid in 17. Ronnie Blackman in 2016. I had Patrick Carr, Lee Walker, Devin Ross, Gerald Thomas, Rashad Hall, Donnie
yeah.
Duncan, Andre Simmons, Rodney Stewart, Marquise Seamus. Man, that guy had a
Wow.
lot of talent.
Yeah.
Sherman Lang and Gardner McKay. So I've botched this award a few times as well. But part of this is a lot of these guys have been like track guys, and it does add to the point of just because you're a track star, it's not going to
Right.
always translate to the football field. And to your point of, they weren't pulling in top 25 classes
Yeah.
like they are with Coach Prime now, so it's
Right.
a little
Right.
different. Any of those names bring up any memories for you beyond
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Rashad
not
Clayton?
not happy ones. I mean, I don't know, you're not going to throw out a lot of names from the last 20, 15 years and go, hey, thank God bless America. We got that guy. Holy cow. But did that work out?
Devin Ross in there, he was a guy that he had issues with drops from time to time, but he
Issues?
kind
That's
of hung
kind
around
of,
in NFL practice squads for a long
yeah.
time, played overseas, I think, a little bit too. I don't even think he's hung them up officially, and he was a
Yeah.
2013 90.
Well, when you can run like that, you're going to get a lot of chances, and everybody thinks they can teach you to catch a football, but I don't know. At the end of the day, you are what you are.
Yeah.
That kind of speed is going to get you a lot of opportunities.
Oh boy. Most versatile doesn't look a whole lot better. Last year, again, hey, you give me top 25 classes, I can
Right.
make a good list here. Adam Hopkins, very versatile. That fits the mold here.
Yeah.
Before that, oh boy. Okay. A couple of these are fine, but this is pretty rough. Okay. 2022 was Oki Salavea. Before that, Nico
Yeah.
Reed, good player. Chris
Yeah.
Carpenter, Trustin Oliver, Dimitri Stanley, good player. Chris Miller, Trey Udofa, Nick Fisher, Donovan Lee, Kenneth Olobode. That was a good pick.
Well, yeah, there's some good ones in there.
Marcus Mosley, Kyle Washington, Harold Mobley, Josh Moten, Ray Polk, Anthony Wright, Nate Solder. Look at that.
Look at
That's a
that.
good
Yeah,
pick.
there you go.
Six.
Tight
And
end.
Ryer Gear in '05. I had, yeah, some
Yeah, those
really
aren't
good
bad.
picks mixed in with
A
some
lot of
really
those
bad
are
ones.
actually fairly good. Didn't Ryer Gear, spend a little time at the next level?
He led the team in receiving his redshirt freshman year as a tight end, and yeah,
Yeah.
had a good career. Anthony Wright had to medically retire. Harold Mobley called a teacher a name that you can't call a teacher that name, and he wasn't in the program any longer.
Whoops.
Nick Fisher he had a really fun moment in that 2016
Yeah.
season. Do
Yeah.
you remember the week where
Yeah. Playing
it
Washington
was
State.
it Moeller? It was some guys got injured in front of him, and he got thrust into the
Yeah.
nickelback role, and he
Yeah.
made a play on fourth down that basically won the game for him.
Yeah. It was Washington State game, and it was home game, and I was standing next to his parents when he did it. We were
That's awesome. What
yeah.
was their
And
reaction?
we were hugging and jumping up and down, and it was exciting because he had actually, it wasn't just that play. He had a pretty good game that week, and it was just exciting. I don't know how I wound up, sitting there with his folks, but they all sit in that same section, and they were at the very back row of that section, right where the walkway was that particular year. And I don't know why I wound up there, but that was a lot of fun.
I will I'll stand up for my pick of Chris Miller in 2017. I think had injuries not,
Yeah,
you know, time after time sidelined him,
right.
he would have been a really, really good buff and a guy that folks would have remembered for a long time. But man, he could not stay on the field. All right, our next category is it used to be titled most ready to make an impact, and that it was when it was with high school guys.
Right,
I
because I
think
was going to say,
probably now rephrase it to ready to make the biggest impact.
yeah, and I almost think you just leave it for the high school guys, but because every one of those transfers is presumably a guy that you expect to make an impact.
Yeah.
You know
But
what
I
I mean?
had Will Shepard here just because of what he did in the SEC, and I know he's not getting on campus until this summer, but his body of work at Vanderbilt, and I think he's going to bring a lot of what Zay Weaver did to the table this past year. So and he's going to be a visible part of this program, a guy that's making a lot of plays, part of a lot of highlights that are getting people to tune into to Colorado games. Do you have a different guy here?
Well, I mean, I kind of just applied it to because a lot of the guys, it's almost the same um, sort of criteria, really. As we talked about the top signee and the most underrated and whatever, and sort of who's going to make the biggest impact. But so I kind of applied it to the six high school guys, and I think that's a good spot to stick in Jordan Seaton. You know, um, as most ready to make an impact in sort of an unexpected way as a true freshman at a position where freshmen don't play a lot. It's who
Yeah.
I would go with
You're never going to guess who I picked last year.
for most ready to make an impact.
Yeah. Now this was only with high school and JUCO signees last year because we didn't do the transfers yet. I had Jack Wiltie as my pick there. So
Well,
do with that as you wish.
started the first game and played really well, and then the dumb son bitch didn't play him anymore. I don't know what to tell you about that one. Probably not. So then, nice weather we're having. What's the next category?
Let's go back through the years with my most ready to make an impact. Again, these are all high school guys from 2022 dating back from there. Ashton Logan, Trustin Oliver, Guy Thomas, Vaatofu Saaveo, Darian Jones, Javier Edwards, Juwan Winfrey, Alex Kinney, Akella Witherspoon, Bryce Bobo, Kisma Jagny. Man, I have not thought about that name in many
Geez,
years.
did any of these guys ever actually put on a CU uniform?
Will Oliver, Tony Jones, Edward Knuckles, Sean Moeller,
Ed
PT
Knuckles.
Gates,
Holy hell. Wow.
Jimmy
PT.
Smith, and George Hippolyte. So again, just some
Ed,
great
Ed,
picks in there and some guys that just never even really did
Ed
anything.
Knuckles, I can still remember because he was like a 4 or 5 star, and the guy looked like he was 35, 40 years
Yeah.
old, for Christ's sakes, man. He was like 6'5", 320. And my God, he just looked like he was about to turn 40 and I don't know, it was academics or something. I don't know that he ever actually put on a CU uniform.
The first pick that I ever had there back in '05, George Hippolyte, one of my favorite buffs
Yeah.
of all time, not only because of his personality,
Yeah.
which is a great personality, one of the best interviews we've ever had on the CU beat, and he's a lawyer now.
Oh, yeah. The
But
rabid
he would
goldfish.
talk back to Dan Hawkins, and there were open practices back then. That was really entertaining. I really respect him for sniffing out the fact that his head coach was kind of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he would talk back to Dan Hawkins. I
Like
enjoyed
what?
that.
Like what kind of things?
Well, one day, so fights were not allowed in practice with Dan Hawkins. Yeah, even a small scuffle would result in them stopping practice, having the whole team go over, and they would have to run 15 gassers. And Dan Hawkins' theory on that is it was one gasser for every yard you cost us in the game, and
Oh God.
it's a penalty for all of us if you get in a fight. So George Hippolyte just refused to run. He's like, I was in the right. I'm not going to do it. And so they got into it pretty good.
He's a lawyer now, you say. What are the odds? Defense lawyer, I'm sure, right? Oh,
Yeah.
if I see him in court, I'm going to give him a hard time.
He is sharp as a tack. It's funny too because one of the years he was at CU, and I'm sure you remember this, William, is they had the South Park characters introduce the starting lineups for a
Yeah,
Colorado
yeah, right.
game. It was a
Yeah,
home game against Nebraska, and when they went to the defense, was it Cartman? What I
yeah,
forget what
yeah,
character it
yeah,
was. He
for sure.
said,
Yeah,
and on the defensive line, starting is George the Rabid Goldfish Hippolyte.
yeah, and it's stuck.
And so we went up to George afterwards and we're like, is that a nickname we're just not aware of? And he goes, I have no idea. It was just completely made up by the writers. And it did stick. And what was it, Tyler Ziskin that made No, it was somebody else that made t-shirts,
Yeah,
Rabid Goldfish
rabbit
t-shirt.
goldfish,
I got a shirt. I think I used to do yard work with my Rabid Goldfish
rabbit
t-shirt
gold.
on.
Yeah, that'd be great for NIL era. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. What do we have left here? Biggest surprise. Last year was Jaden Milliner-Jones. He was committed to SMU until Colorado made a late run at him. And that ended up being a really nice late addition for Colorado because
Yeah,
he played quite a bit as a true freshman and seems to have a really bright future, some versatility he adds to the secondary. So I like that pick. This year, there's a pretty obvious pick. I'll let you lead off if you want to.
well, I mean, and I guess it depends on how would you define the category? Biggest surprise to pick us or biggest?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got to be the BJ Green or George Seaton, right?
It's got to be Seaton because
Yeah,
even though this was kind of the plan and the works behind the scenes, he did not include Colorado amongst his list of finalists.
yeah,
So I don't know. There really haven't been bigger surprises in Colorado football recruiting history than that, and the way
yeah,
that was orchestrated. And then
yeah,
you had the extra drama during the early signing period.
and all the people that uh probably had hair and they'll look like us as a result.
Yeah.
So I think he was just having fun with it the whole time, whole time. But yeah, so that seems pretty obvious.
Yeah. Daryl Scott was one of the guys back in 08 that won that award in the past. Not many of these guys are even worth mentioning. Davion Taylor was an interesting one in 2018. He was really under the radar.
Yeah,
And we came to find out later that because of religious reasons, he was not allowed to play high school football. And so he was
right,
super
right,
talented. He just didn't get a chance to showcase himself till he
right.
got to the JUCO level. And, Colorado was the first school that was in on him. They saw that potential real early
Right.
on. And he ended up, I think he's still hanging around the NFL. He was drafted by the Eagles and had a really nice career. Terrence Lang is another one to mention there. In 2017, he was committed to USC and he
Right.
flipped late in the process. Jay McIntyre was my pick in 2014. I don't know. I mean, that must
Wow.
have been just because he didn't announce until signing day, but yeah. And Tedrick Thompson, 2013, folks expected him to follow his brother to Minnesota, and he ended up was a big
Right.
piece of that Mike McIntyre class that really turned things around in Boulder. All right. And then lastly, best story. And then you can interpret this however you want.
Right, right,
Last year, my best story pick was Kofi Taylor Barracks. I love the story of how, growing up in England, he caught so much flack for because he just loved football and everybody's telling him that he needs to play soccer. And he went out of his way. He traveled overseas and went to camps across the United States to get those scholarship offers and was in NFL Academy, and that shut down due to COVID. He had many reasons to stop playing football or to never even start, and he just kept going. And hopefully he's a guy that, as Andre Hart, the linebackers coach, says, he's kind of an incubator right now. Hopefully,
right. Steps up.
at the very least, he should be a really good special teams guy for them.
Right, for sure. Certainly's got the size and the athleticism to do that. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of looking down the list. I'm not sure that anybody stands out to me. Did you have one this year?
Yeah, I like Justin Mayer's story quite a bit because he was a true under the radar high school recruit, 2-star. That, there aren't a lot of 2-stars out there. It seems like they slap 3 stars on most guys, and so he was a true under the radar guy. Put in his work, and at UTEP he just wasn't on the radar of college football fans. And so I think coming into Colorado, we've seen his personality uh, really stand out in that locker room, in the weight room, and is going to be one of the key leaders, I think, on this football team. When you pair a Justin Mayers with a Tyler Brown and a Khalil Benson, you've got a lot of personality, a lot of maturity
Right.
in that room. And so I like his story of I really think Justin Mayers is going to end up being drafted next year. And so to come from that
Yeah.
start of a 2-star guy at UTEP and then to bet on himself, come to Colorado. And so I like that story. That would probably be my pick this year.
Yeah, that's exciting too. And I think you're right. And that people probably immediately think an offensive lineman get drafted from CU. Well, some of these guys we're bringing in are a whole different breed than what we've had before, but I'm looking down the list, and like some of these guys like a Preston Hodge or even LeJohntay Wester, came out of nowhere, were not ranked out of high school. And then there's so many schools in Florida, Wester was at Florida Atlantic, right? And then Hodge was at well, he went to Liberty, I think, but some of these guys coming out of nowhere and making a name for themselves and showing up are a good story. And then I think trying to make sure I get the right guy here. One guy I would nominate for best story is because of his mom. um
Khalil Benson.
yes, right. Yeah. Who she seems like a lot of fun, and I just did that long interview, and so that's a lot of fun to me.
Yeah. There's been some fun stories as I'm looking over this list. In 2022, I had Isaac Hurtado. I love the story of how Colorado was trying to offer him a scholarship, but he was like in his shift at Target and he wouldn't leave it to take the phone call. So they had to wait until later in the day because
Nice.
he was just this hardworking kid.
Yeah,
Um, who else do I have in here? 2019, Valentin Sen. He was from Austria.
right,
A cool story. 2018, Davian Taylor. We just talked
right.
about him. 2017, James Stefano. How old was he when his career at Colorado
Oh my
ended?
God. Yeah, I don't know, getting close to 30, wasn't he?
Such a great
Yeah,
personality.
yeah,
Who else do I have on here? Philip Lindsay in 2013,
yeah.
obvious.
That was a great one. Right.
I mean, he jacked up his knee and there's a coaching change and he didn't know if he's going to be
Couldn't
able
even
to
walk.
fulfill his
Yeah,
dream of going to play at CU. But Mike McIntyre staff honored that commitment and he got it worked out. Chidera Uzo Duribe in 2010 was a good story. He was late to playing organized football. He came out to Boulder the summer between his junior and senior year, and they did full contact camps back then. And no one knew who this young man was because he didn't play high school football his junior year. By the end of that 3-day or 2 or 3 day full contact camp, he got a scholarship from Colorado, became a priority, and he got other offers later on as he played that senior season, but he stayed loyal to Colorado. And
yeah.
now he's one of the top defensive assistants in college football.
Right down at Georgia. Who was the big outside linebacker that played with Nate Landman um, from Florida? Uh, Starting outside linebacker was our leading sacker there for a couple years.
Derek McCartney?
No. White kid from down in Florida. Had the same similar sort of story. Came up to the CU camp and was the fastest guy in the camp.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Carson Wells.
Carson Wells, yeah,
Yeah.
came up and was the fastest guy in camp. And I remember, one of the first things I ever saw from him was him jumping from the ground up onto the side of the bed of a full size pickup. I'm like, holy crap,
Yeah.
who can do that?
That was a good story.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
another one, and people said, whoever heard of Carson Wells, but the guy came out here and just was a flat out crazy athlete. He's been a guy that in that class certainly was the best athlete. So lots of those kinds of stories of guys that didn't get that kind of, and I think a lot of those guys are gonna in today's era with the open transfer portal and such, you're gonna see a lot more of those kinds of guys like Justin Mayer and who kind of got missed and then came out and were really good in the game and get better opportunities.
My best story back in '09 was Parker Orams, and it's still a kind of a cool story. I don't know if you followed this, William, but he's got a hat store now. He sells cowboy hats,
Oh
custom
wow.
cowboy hats, and actually, Coach Prime's oldest daughter came out and got fitted for a hat for one of the home games this year, and they did a video series on
Oh
YouTube with
wow.
that. It was really
Wow.
cool, and I've run into Parker at a bunch of charity events. He's definitely a big time CU fan, and he was a guy. He was just smaller in
Right.
uh, when he was at Wheat Ridge High School. He was just incredible, but you didn't know if he was that next level athlete. And so it wasn't until the state championship game when he took that touchdown run on fourth down to win the
Right.
championship that Colorado extended the offer. And it's unfortunate for him that he tore his ACL 4 plays into his college career because he was a really good buff and he played in a lot of games, but I think he would have been a really, really good player if it wasn't for that injury.
Yeah, for sure.
In '07, I had Anthony Perkins as my best story, and this is mostly because before he committed to Colorado during spring ball, and this is back during the Dan Hawkins era, there was a major blizzard. And I remember BG Brooks was the only other writer that day that was willing to brave this snowstorm to cover this practice. And we're standing out there in as many layers as we own in our closet. And there's this high school kid over here watching it. And I remember that practice was so crazy. They stopped it at one point to do a sliding competition because they just weren't getting enough done on the
Right.
football aspect of it. This is before the bubble was up and pre
Right.
all that indoor practice facility and all that stuff. And I introduced myself to the young man, and it was Anthony Perkins. And I went home and did research on him, and he had a Colorado offer. And I just remember thinking, there's no chance he's going anywhere else. This kid was out here in a
Yeah.
blizzard watching this football team
Right.
practice. He's definitely going to be a buff.
Yeah. Those are great stories. Lots of things like that back, I have to think about it, but back in the late 80s and early 90s, you had stories like that with some of those guys that end up later on being superstars,
Yeah.
kind of coming in and being nobodies at the first. So
Cool, William. Well, there's again not going to be a ton of fireworks during the regular signing period, but uh, if you need if that's making you down, you just kind of have to look back through some of the guys they've already added this
right,
offseason. I did
right,
again, the work has kind of been done already, and then there's
right,
going to be another stretch in spring. It's just the calendars change. It's no longer as big a deal as it used to be.
right. And the standard signing day is just not that big of a deal anymore. If pretty much if you're just looking for under the radar kind of guys, I guess, really that have that you're just not going to see big surprises on this day anymore. I don't think.
Yeah. William, it was fun to recap everything that's been going on. I appreciate you as always.
For sure. I guess we're going to dinner on Thursday night, and
Yeah, we probably don't want to give out the details. Like I said on the last show, we don't want paparazzi showing
right,
up.
showing up, and trying Dan Lanning trying to get my autograph, things like that.
No, that will be fun to recap on the next show.
Yeah,
We're
for
getting the
sure.
wives together, and we'll have a nice Mexican meal, and we'll recap it on the next show.
Everybody watch the news wire the next morning. Make sure nothing happened.
All right, all right, William. Appreciate you, and I appreciate
All right.
everybody out there for
Okay.
tuning in.